Well, I have been, I feel like unset jello this morning. I'm still sort of sloshing around with where to land. I'm talking metaphorically, of course. Although, I could be convinced. I've told you the story, I think, before, of when I was, quite a few years ago, I was in Spiritual Life Center, and I had given a talk on a Sunday, and I went into the fellowship room, and this young woman came up to me, and she said, thank you for your message today. You rock. And I said, oh, you liked it. Thank you. And she said, yeah, I liked it. And she said, but no, you rock. I said, well, thank you. And she said, no, you rock. That's what we have these things here for. So I'm not moving. It was funny because the next few talks that I gave after that particular Sunday, all I could really think about was, am I standing still? And I'm sure I looked like a statue with a moving mouth, you know. So I'll just level with you and be honest, because that always seems to work, right? We have we're in the middle of a series, right? So I should be talking about part 4, and I may even do that today. But what's so strong in me is the experience that I had here Friday afternoon. It was a memorial service for Andy Hernandez, a 17-year-old boy who stepped off the pier and ended his life on Tuesday. And his mom, Maria, who has attended services here off and on for years, and their kids were part of the program off and on over the years, contacted us and said, we'd like to have the memorial service here. And, we're, of course, glad to do that. And very honored to be able to hold that space. And in the back of my mind, even though I've been doing this for many years, the sense that I had that this would be one of the most difficult memorial services to do. Particularly since Andy Hernandez was a much-loved young man. And the manner in which he ended his life, and the fact that he did end his life. And this was all made part of the reality of what would be the memorial service on Friday. And so we spent time talking with his mom and dad and preparing a eulogy and a service and all the different elements. And I just want you to know that when it came right down to it, by the end of that memorial service, which was about 3:30, went from 2 o'clock to 3:30, I would sum up by saying it was one of the most difficult, the most profoundly difficult, and the most deeply beautiful experiences that I have ever had as a minister. And I have officiated at many, many memorial services, even young people. And the reason that it was difficult would be obvious, but the reason that it was beautiful, I wanted to share with you. This young man, everyone described him as one of the most kind, caring, generous souls that they had ever met. And this wasn't just his peers. This was his teachers, and 2 of his coaches spoke and said that Andy was the finest human being they had ever known of any age. So do you see the paradox? On one hand, we rush to judgment. Yeah? We rush to make up a story about the tragedy of a young man ending his life at 17. But if I wasn't in the room to witness the outpouring of love for this man, for how people's lives had been impacted, whose people said that they had completely changed their way of seeing life and what mattered in life and how to treat people and how to care about people. So what is the purpose of a life? And when is a life too short? Everyone was talking about the idea that if we just took the lesson of his life, that we could create the greatest legacy to him. If we became the person that we could become. If we allowed the love that is probably latent within us, that is not fully realized and certainly not fully expressed, to come forward, we would have a most magnificent life. That at its end would be a testimony to what is possible when we open ourselves up to love, when we open ourselves up to who and what we really are. I had the thought that, and I expressed it during the service, that, and I didn't tell you how many people were here, so let me give you that graphic, because we filled all the chairs, and that was just with, the friends and family. But then the aisles were full, all the way down. The whole breezeway was filled there, and there was people lined up from the windows to about the middle of the grass. So I would guess something like 350 people were here. Many of the kids from the high school were here. Now you got to understand that they had already had a ceremony at the pier the day before, I believe it was. So the young people had gathered 300 strong to honor his life. So they didn't have to come on Friday. They'd already, if it was perfunctorily, they had done their duty, they had shown up and stood for a long time. But they stood, and they didn't move. And it was, you could hear a pin drop as they allowed people to share. And I thought, how many of us could say that many people would show up for our memorial service after already having attended one? So I just felt so honored, you hear me? To be, and I never got to know him, but in the content of this service and all the people sharing their personal anecdotes, how they had been deeply touched, stories of extraordinary generosity. His mom shared that when he was 6 years old, and he had been adopted when he was 6 years old, and he had been taken out of a foster home situation that was not a good one. And he was 6 years old, and he went to school for the first time with his new family. And he had been told at home that he wasn't allowed to have candy during the day. So on the very first day of school, the teacher welcomed all the kids and gave them all this little chocolate heart as a gift. And so at the end of the day, his mom picked him up, and he got in the car, and he handed her this chocolate heart. And she said, "What's this?" He said, "Well, the teacher gave it to us." And she said, "Oh, well, that's for you, honey." He said, "No, it's for you, Mom." I don't know how many kids you know at 6 years old that would hold on to a piece of chocolate all day long with the thought in mind that this will be for Mom. But that kind of gives you, a bit of an insight into this obviously old soul who thought, how could he make someone's life better, day better, moment better? I'll tell you, I was humbled. I thought, I don't deserve to stand here and be officiating at this service, because this was like a bodhisattva, someone who has come to this earth to teach us about true unconditional love and caring. So if I'm going to tie it into today's lesson, I would just say this. I would say that what happens when you and I would perhaps intend to be who we really are, which is love itself, that we come up against an edge. We come up against a wall. We come up against a place where it's uncomfortable, yes? And most of us find that that's as far as we can go, because it's so uncomfortable. And it's sort of a natural human reaction to retreat when we get into a place that's uncomfortable. And the metaphor that's given in our book, in our text, is it's like we started our life or started our original nature, you could say, in an open field, a beautiful field that was just gorgeous, and the sun, was shining and radiating all of the landscape in so many colors, and the smells and the sounds of nature were just filling us, sort of this Garden of Eden sort of notion, right? That's the original nature, that's the original reality in which we were created to experience. And as time went on, as we began to sort of come into this life and began to take on some of the perceptions and the responses to how life was coming at us, that we began to build a house. And at first, we built a house and it was just like all windows, lots of light coming in, and we allowed the outside to be the inside, very, very Santa Barbara, very, very Hawaii, like with the indoors is the outdoors, and this is just, we have to control this just a little bit. But mostly there's sort of this porous experience of being part of it all, and the light and the love and the glory of the universe, and that's just sort of the relationship that I have. But then more and more experiences came to us, and we ended up having experiences that were difficult. And the way the mind interpreted that is, I think maybe there's too many windows, Maybe we should just cut down on the number of windows we have here. We need to think a little bit more about sort of protection. And this sort of decision got made. I'm rocking, I know. Decision got made. I just realized that I bring it up, Self-awareness, it's a good thing. So we were sort of in the tension of the conflict between being more open and having this light all the time and the need to protect ourselves, this sort of human part of us that feels like I'm not safe. And that the way we begin to construct it, instead of realizing that there was safety in the oneness, we believed that we could only find safety in a form of protection, to begin to build walls so that there would be something that would sort of keep away the bad guys, that would keep us from being harmed and being hurt. And over time, of course, these are not real walls. Of course, the metaphor is that those walls were made of our beliefs, our psyche. And that over time, we ended up feeling like, we really can't control this very well as long as we have windows and doors, Maybe have one door, but make sure it's got like 3 deadbolts on it, Because that's the safe place. And safety became the higher value than freedom. And so here's this young man who comes into this world, and he has no walls. And he even goes through a most difficult foster home experience where he was not treated well. But somehow, because, and I don't know why, but I'm guessing because of the way truth is that somehow he never associated what was happening to him in the human experience as a reason to build a wall. And so he kept open. He kept the heart open. He stayed connected with the love that he is, that we are. And his care for other people exceeded his need to protect himself and to close his heart. And he becomes the one that teaches us how to live. Now, we can't all be like Andy Hernandez right off the bat. But what I know from my own experience and people that I've worked with, Denise has worked with, is that our work is to move closer to the edges, to get to those places where it begins to feel uncomfortable. And you don't have to go charging through, You don't have to go charging through those walls into the great beyond. but you can begin to go into those places that begin to feel uncomfortable and see if you can stay there for a while longer than you did the last time. And it's not because you're some sort of a masochist that, you're going to just endure this pain, but it's so that you can actually be with this pain so that you can experience it for what it is and not make a decision about it that is more influential in having you back away from it than the actual suffering itself. Because it's when we say that I can't deal with this and we resist, that is the biggest pain of all. Not the situation, not the individual, not the person, not the circumstance that seems scary. It's the resistance that I have. And if I can get myself to be with whatever I'm feeling uncomfortable with, then I can stay present. And when I stay present, then I have access to this beingness, this light that I am, to shine a light of truth upon what I think is a difficult or impossible situation, so that I don't build a wall around my heart. So that I don't begin to believe that I have to, in order to keep myself safe, that I have to enclose my experience of myself. Because all of the spiritual masters, the ones who have been able to deal with the most difficult life situations, were those who expanded their self of sense, who busted out the walls, who kept moving the walls out until no more walls existed. Until then they realized that who they really are can't be harmed. Only who you think you are. So on a lighter note, I want to share what Michael Singer says, this heavy thing that we have laid upon our mind to take care of us in this life. And so it says this: you've asked your mind to do this. You've said to your mind, I want everyone to like me. I don't want anyone to speak badly of me. I want everything I say and do to be acceptable and pleasing to everyone. I don't want anyone to hurt me. I don't want anything to happen that I don't like. And I want everything to happen that I do like. Then you said, now, mind, figure out how to make every one of these things a reality, even if you have to think about it day and night. And of course, your mind said, I'm on the job. I will work on it constantly. Can you imagine somebody trying to do that? The mind has to try to make it so that everything you say is the right way, taken the right way, has the right effect on everybody. It has to make sure that everything you do is interpreted and seen the right way, that nobody does anything that hurts you. It has to make sure that you get everything you want and you don't ever get what you don't want. The mind is constantly trying to give you advice about how to make it all okay. That is why the mind is so active. You gave it an impossible task to do. This is what has broken the psyche. The signs of the body breaking are pain and weakness. The signs of the psyche breaking are underlying fear and incessant neurotic thought. All I know is that I want to be more like Andy Hernandez. I mean, what I would leave with you today is that, and this is what maybe every spiritual teacher has ever said, and Jesus said it very plainly, these things that I have done, so shall you do, and even greater. Because I have gone to the Father, because I have gone to the source, because I have remembered who I am, because I have taken the difficult journey to keep bumping up against those places that are so uncomfortable again and again and again, and being able to see through them, being able to see that those cannot keep me from who and what I truly am. They're only uncomfortable at the level of this human perception. And this human perception, as we have just heard, is not to be trusted. It doesn't tell us the truth about us. It does tell us how to protect ourselves, and we do need to protect this thing because it is very vulnerable. But beyond that particular value of building protection around ourselves, most of the protection that we build around ourselves is not needed for us to really be okay. And that's what I keep telling myself. And that's what every day I get up and I encounter somewhere during my day, I encounter a place where it's uncomfortable. And, I need to start celebrating that, right? Because if I'm living within my comfort zone, the chance of me ever growing, expanding, and becoming more aware of who I am is very little. Is that right? Do we know that to be true? There's no growth inside your comfort zone. These houses that we have, these constructs of beliefs and everything that say life has to be just like this for me to be okay is very confining. I can't even rock when I'm in here. That's how confining it is. And don't you know we need to move, right? And rock. Because we're made to move, to be fluid. As the older we get, maybe a little harder to be fluid. So if we can't be fluid of body, we should be fluid of mind and fluid of heart. I mean, that's how I want to age gracefully, yeah? I want to be someone who can be with life and just be with life, whatever arises, and not be thrown on tilt, Not be thrown off, not be compromised, not be diminished. Amen. Woman in the front row just said amen. Let's give her love. It was the decision she made to say amen. And it really is a decision. We think it's not. We think, oh, no, you don't know what I grew up with. You don't know about my family. Who I'm living with, what I have to deal with. You don't know my past. You know what? Everybody's got a past. Everybody's got something, right? So all we do is we just take it where we are, and we just come up to the edge, and we can just feel like it's a little uncomfortable. And if you find that the longer you can stay there at that edge and just breathe into it, right? Just be with it, just be with it, be with it. You'll find that your spacious nature begins to arise. But if you pull back, then we just deepen this sense of tightness, of solidity. We become solid, we become immobile, we become resistance itself. And there's no growth there. Then life just has to be, I can't go there. And then there's a place over here where we can't go, and a place over here where we can't go. And then life, which can be absolutely unlimited and amazing, like Jim was saying. Isn't that the life that you and I were born to live? To know who we are. And that we can do that one cautious step at a time, one braver entering into some uncomfortable place at a time. There's a metaphor that's used in the book of if you have a dog that you don't have a fence around your property, or you decide to take the fence down and you put up an invisible fence for the dog. You know what that is? And so the dog wears a certain collar, and as he gets to the invisible fence that's buried in the ground, he feels a strong vibration, and so he pulls back, right? And so after a while, he doesn't even go there anymore because he knows, just intuits that that's what's going to happen. But the big dogs, the strong dogs, the dogs that have vision, which is, we're the big dogs, We don't have to be just Pavlovian about our responses to life. We can actually learn that we can stand there maybe at the edge, and it may be uncomfortable for a while. Just the dog even finds this out that, hey, I'm not going to die. I don't have to take my first reaction to this thing and decide that that's as far as I can go. And eventually, those dogs will be able to cross that. And so can we. That's the beauty of what we are really made of, is that there is a resilience and there's a power that allows us to move through the difficult places. And I know that that's what I signed up for in this lifetime, and I know that that's what I'm here to do. And that's what I'm here to invite, us to do together. I mean, I'm working on stuff, you're working on stuff, but when we work on it together, we can embolden each other because, there's power in sharing our journey. That's the value of spiritual community, yeah? Why else have a spiritual community? We can go on the internet and get all kinds of Muji and Rupert Spira and all these great spiritual teachers, yeah? The internet is full of that, but you can't do this. You can't hold hands. You can't look in the eyes of somebody. You can't be heart to heart with people and say, join me on this journey. I need a little help, and you've been farther than I have, so I need you. I don't need you in a codependent way. I need you as an ally, just like on this hero's journey. You need little helpers along the way to get as far as we can go. So I believe in spiritual community. And what happened here on Friday afternoon was the most beautiful demonstration of spiritual community that was a spontaneous spiritual community. It was an ad hoc where people who shared a love and a connection with an individual gathered here, and they set up canopies and tables and brought in tons of food, and it all happened effortlessly and joyfully and gracefully. It was the most beautiful demonstration of community that I have seen. It just reminded me of how important it is for us to gather, especially in the tough times. We can celebrate in community, we can grieve in community, and all of it is deeper and richer for having done it together. So I'm honored and humbled to be here, continue to be here with you. And after my experience on Friday, I know that there is possibility that love can just do such great work in us. And I'm wanting to move more towards those edges where I shrink so that I can experience and express more of the love that I am. We can all do this, yes? It's who we are.